listening to What in the World. I'm your host, Isaac Hedges, joined once again by co-host Jacob Palmer. Jake, what in the world are we looking at tonight?
Tonight, we got two final questions on our series on philosophy and big ideas. So we'll go ahead and we'll dive into questions 9 and 10. We'll start with question number 9. What makes something beautiful?
Oh, gee, well, that's a great question, Jake. And kind of throughout this whole series of philosophy and big ideas, we sort of had one of the recurring themes that we've seen is the transcendentals, of course. Um, certainly would be considered would fall neatly under philosophy. Certainly, more specifically, theology and whatnot. But of course, the transcendentals being the good, the true, and the beautiful. And I would say that oftentimes those are sort of interwoven with each other. And oftentimes, one is sort of an indication, a pretty good indication of the other. If you see one, there's a good chance that the other one, the other two are coming your way, even. So, again, it's certainly worth noting on that front as to what exactly makes something beautiful. So, suppose that would be my answer, and I reckon this is true of all sorts of things, and just in the most very basic sense, in terms of sort of how a person lives out their life. Again, it certainly plays a role in the other two. For example, on the truth end of things, if a person is living their life in a way that's honest, well, again, that's likely to coincide with, again, the truth is likely to coincide with the goodness and beauty. There's certainly, in my experience, Jake, that tends to be the case that the more honest or more good a person appears to be, the more beautiful they appear to be also, and so true as the opposite there, the vice versa. What would you say?
Yeah, well, I think that kind of goes more into people, I guess, as far as, I guess you could say things through
Right,
people. But
right,
I would
people, and I
say if we
reckon I
go
would
kind of,
say, sorry
that was
about that.
one.
I reckon, I reckon I would say the same of all sorts of things.
Yeah, that is an interesting point to make here. And as far as, again, as far as things or people, it's just kind of in that same kind of grouping. And that kind of leads us into our 10th and final question. So here on this 10th edition, we ask our 10th and final question here of this philosophy and big ideas, which our final question for tonight is happiness a choice or a circumstance? And I would say, I know sometimes these either or questions, I tend to answer with a little bit of both, or it depends. I don't think that's the case with this kind of a question. I feel like that there is one definitive answer, and I think that happiness is a choice. I think it's whether or not we choose to be happy in whatever circumstance that we're in. I think that's kind of a good way to use both of those terms. But yeah, I think happiness is a choice, and I think it depends on whether or not we're happy with whatever the circumstances we're in. And maybe our circumstances aren't that great. Obviously, we're all going to go through challenges, trials, and tribulations, some more than others. Obviously, life is not necessarily fair. Some will have more disadvantages against them. And so you could say that happiness is a circumstance, but I would argue that happiness is a choice because it's how you handle those trials and tribulations. Do you show happiness during those trials and tribulations, or do you let the circumstance get the best of you and choose to be unhappy? But I think as far as, and then you say, well, that's kind of hard to do. If my situation is A, B, and C, it's kind of hard to be happy. But the thing is, is being sad about your circumstance, is that really going to change things? Is that really going to make things better? Or is having a positive outlook, even in the most trying times, going to at least give you something that maybe will help you gain confidence in order to work your way out of that circumstance, at least from a mental side of things? So, from a mental side of things, I think that we're able to build out of that circumstance if we do have happiness. And so through that, I think happiness is a choice.
Certainly, Jake. That's a great point there. And naturally, you have to admire those people who, in spite of encountering many unfortunate circumstances, always manage to keep keep a cheerful way about things, keep a sort of a cheerful tone and disposition about it all, perhaps in spite of all these unfortunate circumstances. Say, perhaps they've been through a tornado, perhaps they've been through a break in, an electrocution, a car accident, being pushed off a ledge, being tied up in a basement, anything of the sort. They may have encountered any great many mishaps. Not that any of those would sound familiar in the slightest, Jake, though this may be somewhat surprising. As you know, I tend to be actually somewhat more linear in my responses as to whether it's right or wrong, yes or no, one choice over the other. Well, in this case, I would say that both of these play a significant role. I would say again, principally, it is a choice. Again, it's not something that you can rely on in your circumstances. But if I'm being honest in terms of circumstances, there are oftentimes things, as well as the unfortunate, those mishaps, as we previously mentioned, none of which might sound familiar, those unfortunate things that might occur throughout the span of one's life. Well, there are many of great blessings that occur in one's life to different things. And it's easy to take those things for granted, but I would say that just as much as it is important to maintain a cheerful disposition about things, it certainly doesn't hurt to have those favorable circumstances. When something wonderful happens to you, Jake, I don't know about you, but can't help but again, have a bit of a skip in my step, just feel a bit lighter. So I think that certainly plays a role in it. I'd be lying if I said it had nothing to do with it. So perhaps, again, an unsatisfying, less linear answer from my part than usual, but that would be my 2 cents.
Yes, I think so. I mean, it depends on, you have to have happiness, even if the circumstance is maybe not necessarily the greatest. And I've just been informed that we have a bonus question for this series, which we're going to get to in a moment. But I just want to remind you that even when your team loses in the next couple of days here in March Madness, you've got to stay cheerful.
Absolutely.
So, just as
Yes.
a kind of a quick reminder of that, of course, we've got the Final Four coming up this weekend and then the national championship next Monday. But stay cheerful and stay happiness, even in the worst of circumstances, including losing in that Final Four game in the championship game. Well, let's go ahead and look at our final question here. Question number 11. Have these questions been good ones?
Oh, well, that's a great question, Jake. And there have been a few odd ones in there, but for the most part, overall, I'd say yes, they have been good questions. And throughout the course of this series, what in the world? Again, we've only started it just recently, but it has been quite the ride. And again, I would say enjoyable at that. Certainly, they have been good ones, thought provoking and interesting to answer. Hopefully, for the folks at home, they have been just as thought provoking. And if you've got any questions for us, you can reach out as always by putting comments down below this video or giving us a call at our brand new number 417 448 0819. And let us know if you've got any burning questions, and we'll try to answer those here. A random question, though it may be, we might address it right here on What in the World. Again, if you'd like to do that, the number is 417-448-0819. So, have these questions been good ones? Jake, what do you think?
Well, I think it's kind of interesting that artificial intelligence would ask us this question in the middle of the set of questions.
Yes, it is. It is quite interesting
I mean,
and
what in the world
somewhat
is it doing?
surprising. That is a great question. Well, perhaps the initial sense, if this agent, as it were, actually intended to receive a response, perhaps for feedback, for generating future questions, perhaps they how to take feedback, modify things based on that. That would be my guess, so I don't know exactly the context under which these questions were retrieved.
Well, I'm just reading a little bit further. I didn't read below the questions, but I was reading below and just reading what artificial intelligence says. And it says, um, Isaac, April Fools, signed co pilot and host Jacob Faulkner.
And yes, Jake, I do not know if you probably could not hear that coming through on my end, though interesting when you said the name of our friend Copilot came up here in the studio. So good to hear things are working, even when we don't need them to. So hopefully things will be working just as well whenever we actually do need our dear friend Copilot, but an April Fool's message, and here he is again coming up on my computer. Not yet.
Well,
Well,
yeah, I kind of had a feeling that that was going to happen. But yeah, so of course, since it is April 1st of 2026, and because we didn't actually do an April Fool's episode this year on the podcast, thought we would go ahead and throw that in there since it is Wednesday, April 1st.
absolutely. So I suppose I struggle to grasp exactly the premise. Was this a joke written by AI? If it was, I suppose perhaps that's why I don't understand. Was it that the last question was a joke, or what?
Well, that was actually a question that I typed in there at the very
Ah,
end.
yes, I see. So that wasn't actually AI. I didn't think it sounded quite like AI. It was somewhat surprising. But yes, quite interesting there. So again, April Fool's Day. Shoot. Happy April Fool's Day to all of us at home out there. Again, quite the hoot. You can take it right here again on good authority from a fool, no less himself, right here on the Great World Podcast. Again, if you'd like to learn more, in past years we actually have done April Fool's Day specials, so you can check that out on our YouTube channel where we check out a little bit about the history of it. But of course, long story short, it's of French origin. Of course, originates there, took place around the time from the calendar change that we use now. Of course, the calendar changed from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, which we use now. While some folks didn't get the memo, again, they still celebrated the new year on what would then be April 1st, and so they were called fools. Again, in French, traditionally, they were slapped with a fish, which was associated with fools. Again, this tradition goes far back, of course, many figures in the Bible being a fisherman and different things, and that sort of being a recurring question. Oh, any fool could catch a fish. And again, that's sort of the association with fools and fish, and that's why the association with April Fool's Day and fish in France, that's why they call the holiday there Poisson d'Avril, April fish, or fish of April. But again, now you have it. And like to check out any other information on that, you can check out our previous April Fool's Day special from the past year. And I believe that about wraps up things, unless there's anything you might add, Jake.
Go basketball.
Ah, yes, absolutely. Oh, well done. So I suppose on that note, we conclude things. And so until next time,
I'm Jacob Fulmer.
I'm Isaac Hedges, host of What in the World. From all of us at What in the World and Great World Productions, good night and God bless.